Good morning. We are live this morning. It is not morning, it's afternoon on the East Coast, but it's still morning on the West Coast. So I'm going to let myself get away with that. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. It is the day of love, all kinds of love, and we're spreading it around today. I am here today with Irene, and we are talking about teen romance. Hi, Irene. Thanks for
Hi.
joining us.
Yeah, thank you
We
for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. We are talking teen romance and what parents need to know. And I have a list of questions from parents when I promoted this, and I asked them, what are your questions? And I have some, and Irene is ready to answer them. She already knows all the information that we need to have. Um, and I invite you to join the conversation by putting your questions and comments in the comment section so that we can dialogue with you. Hi, Irene. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and your work?
Sure. So, my name is Irene. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am a RAP coordinator for Day One. RAP stands for Relationship Abuse Prevention Program. I run that program here at a high school in Hell's Kitchen in New York City. And so basically, I teach kids how to have healthy relationships. I do workshops every month. We talk about topics like consent, technology and dating, what is a healthy relationship, what does dating abuse look like for teenagers, things like that. And then I counsel kids on the side. So if a kid sees my workshop or if they see me in the hallway, whatever, and they're like, I don't really have good relationships and I want to fix them. It could be family relationships, it could be romantic relationships, friends, whatever. They can just come to my office and we'll sit and talk about it.
Oh, that's wonderful. And we should tell people that you are actually located in a school and you're there right now.
Yep, I am at school right now. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you. If you want any more information on Day One New York, just go to the comment section. There's a link there, and know that you can access that information even if you are not in New York. Okay, so one of the most prevalent questions asked, and I asked for questions on a couple of different Facebook groups, and people ask, do teens date these days? Do they date today? And if they do, what does it look like? And if they don't date, what does that look like? Because they're still, having relationships.
Yeah. No, kids are dating. Of course they're dating. um, I think everybody's familiar with the terms like we're hanging out, that's it, or we're talking, but like they're date that's what it is. They are dating. It's I think just a more like cooler version of saying we're dating, in their opinion. But yeah, I would say teen dating starts in school. Yeah, you see it at like fifth graders, sixth graders, as young as that, maybe even younger. Um, I see a lot of it obviously in a high school. I am at a high school, so obviously I see it a lot here. But yeah, and then it starts with social media. It could be like sliding into the DMs, as I'm sure a lot of people have heard. But yeah, teens are definitely dating. They are. It might sound a little different, like just the hanging out, whatever, or just talking, whatever. But yes, they are definitely dating.
Okay. Now, I have a list of questions, as you know, but I think it would be better if we start with tell us what we need to know.
Sure. So there are a couple things to consider. So first of all, let's consider how has dating changed with the pandemic and also with like technology, right? So let's start off with technology because technology came first before the pandemic. So uh, how has dating changed? Well, the dating pool is bigger. Flirting is mostly virtual. So flirting can look like liking somebody's post, sending them a meme, sliding in their DMs, whatever. Online harassment is a bit more of a problem. So we see like unsolicited nudes being sent around, cyberbullying, maybe friend requests from people that you don't really know, things like that. There's a bit more jealousy. So I have a lot of students who will come in and say, I saw my partner like somebody else's photo on Instagram, and that bothers me. And that's something that wasn't a thing in what, like the 70s, 80s, like something
Yeah.
like that, like very much not a thing back then. Um, yeah, and then there's constant contact. So they are always in touch with each. They have ways to be in touch with each other. There's no reason that you shouldn't be. Um, so for example, I mean, like, so you see each other at school, maybe that's an example, And then you go home, you talk on the phone, you text, you FaceTime, you call. And if you don't have your phone, maybe you're on a computer and you're on Facebook, it's like Twitter, you're on something. And so you're always constantly in contact with each other. So a lot more contact. Whereas like, think about it back then, maybe you saw each other at school and you're like, cool. Then you would go home. And if you spent the whole night with them on the phone, your parents would be like, absolutely not. So your parents would be like, get off the phone. I have calls to make, whatever, things like that. Right. So it wasn't really much of a thing back then. And so with that constant contact, there's more ways to break up. So people get broken up, texting, FaceTiming, phone calls. Trying to think about it, back in the day, people either broke up with them in person or maybe on the phone, or they just ghosted you and that was just it. You just like never saw them again. Maybe you assumed they died. I don't know. But like nowadays when people ghost, you can see, oh no, they're alive. They're on social media. They're living their life. They just don't want to talk to me anymore. And that's pretty hard to see. And then of course, I was just going to say the last one is that there's just more sexting.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about the sexting before my question.
Sure. Yeah. So sexting happens in a lot of different ways, like unsolicited, solicited. Kids are sexting as young as like 5th grade, 6th grade, even younger. They might not really know what it means. They're just like, this seems like the cool thing to do. And they're sending it through social media. They're thinking, oh, no one's going to see this because I sent it on Snapchat. Or I don't know, or they're like, oh, I trust this person, but then it turns out they shouldn't have. Kids trade these nudes like Pokemon cards these days, so they're just like, so yeah, sexting is very much a thing, and very much something that I think parents should be just a little bit more in tune with. And yeah.
And it sounds like we need to have a longer conversation about that. It reminds me of yesterday. I was at an event and I sitting next to someone. I met a woman with a granddaughter, and she was concerned about her granddaughter who's 11 because she thinks that she is dressing provocatively and behaving above her age, because she is by far the youngest of siblings. Their siblings are adults. The younger, I think the next one is 21 or something like that. And I think that the thing that we have to remind ourselves is that when somebody sends a sext and it gets out and it's shared, that both of these young people, their brains aren't fully developed. Neither one of them really knows what they're doing, the sender nor the receiver, because we like to demonize the receiver who then possibly shares it with other people. But in this whole group, none of them know what they're doing. So we have to educate all of them about it. It's not just don't send. It's also, what do you do? Let people know that you're not receptible for these things. And it's a lot of conversations, Yeah. I had a question. You mentioned breaking up in all the different ways. Sure. Your teen staff, we had this conversation. Do teens break up in person anymore, or is it only via the devices? Sure. Do they really have those courageous conversations like, this isn't working?
Yeah, no, I'm sure they do. They definitely do. I should say I'm sure they do. I know they do. They have these conversations. I've had students come in and they say like, but they know it, right? Like there are so many signs of a breakup coming up. So for example, like their partner is not really answering their texts anymore, or you see that they maybe soft blocked you on social media, meaning that like they muted you, or and so you can still technically access them, but you're not like officially, it's not like you can't see their page or anything. But yeah, like, so there's so many signs that like a breakup is coming. So with my students, I definitely see that like they're having breakups in person, but there were signs that the breakup was coming, so they're not really surprised.
Okay. How involved should parents be? I have a lot of questions about parent involvement and stuff, but in general, how involved should parents be in their teens' romantic life? And then we're going to go to tweens, because you did mention sexting can start as early as 5th grade. So we want to talk about tweens also.
Okay, so first of all, I think I have a lot of tips for parents. I think
Okay.
first they should be open people for their child to come to. So, for
Mhm.
example, um, just saying like, we all make mistakes. We can get through something together. So, for example, if a sexting situation goes wrong, instead of blaming your child, saying it's okay, we make mistakes, we can get through this together.
Mhm.
Using gender neutral language, so your child feels more comfortable enough to come out to you.
Mhm.
So like, do you have a partner, do you like anyone, rather than saying, is there a boy in your class that you think is really cute, is there a girl in your class you think is like whatever. I definitely have students who are non-binary, so I'm in that so that conversation is like even harder, for students to tell their parents, like, oh yeah, well my partner is actually gender neutral. So that's a topic that's something to consider. And yeah, so just being an open person for them to talk to, and reserving judgment. And I think that's really hard. I say that, and I think a lot of people think, oh, I of course I would do that. I had a parent, actually, a conversation with a parent. I was like, listen, when your kid comes in here and you want to talk to them, you want to be this open person for them to talk to, you have to say, like, just kind of be like asking open-ended questions and not being blaming or anything like that to your child. As soon as their kid came into the room, they were like, why are you doing something so stupid? Like, why don't you know any better? Why are you making me come out of work? Like, just like so blaming. And I
Mhm.
was just like, what did I just say? Like, we just had this conversation 2 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, just be an open person for them to come to, and really open questions, keeping an open mind, and being welcoming to whatever questions they have. Because I have kids who come in here, they ask me the funniest questions sometimes, but they're like so embarrassed by it. And I'm like, you know what? These are questions that you could definitely ask your parents. And they're like, nah, that's too embarrassing. But yeah. So
Okay, I'm gonna ask you to share some of these questions without giving anybody up. But I also wanted to point out when you said, that we should try to use gender neutral language, etc. It's okay if it's awkward. And I think we as parents need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. The teens actually recognize your effort. So you don't have to be an expert at this, because a lot of people I know, they don't use the language, or they don't step further into that area because they feel as if they don't know enough and that they're going to look silly. But the teens just really appreciate your trying, that if that is part of their world, that you're making the effort, and you can just go, okay, I'm not sure I got this right, but, and then go ahead and proceed. They'll appreciate it.
yeah, showing that interest in their partners, like without being hostile, is the key to getting kids to open up. So when they say that you're just interested, and it's not that you're holding judgment or anything like that. You just want to know. You just want to make sure that they're safe, and you care about them. And your teenager can tell if that's how you feel, right? So
And what kind of questions do you get? Since you're talking to our kids, what kind of questions do you get?
so I will say, I've had kids who come in here. I do keep condoms in my office, so they're free for anybody to take. It's just a resource that we offer. Um, and I've had kids who they come in here, they're like, I want a condom, and I'm like, okay, take it, whatever. And
Yeah.
then they grab the internal condoms, and they're like, this should be good. And then they like are about to walk out, and I was like, hold on, come back. Do you know what that is? And they're like, yeah, it goes. And then I have to explain to them the difference between an internal condom and the condom that they're thinking of. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're not in the same packaging. But they have no idea. That's probably, I think, one of the funniest things I've had a student come in here for. He was so confident, like, this is it.
Mhm.
This is what's gonna go outside. So, yeah, but I definitely, I have students ask questions like that. So, sex is a funny topic. I think the kids are a little embarrassed. I can imagine parents getting a little embarrassed, but it's okay. These are things that, like, we were all a little embarrassed about it at one point, but the more you talk about it, the more comfortable your kid gets to be with it.
Okay. So we just need to keep talking and be okay being awkward. Um, let's talk a little bit about healthy relationships, because we know that our teens and tweens are going to enter the world of relationships, however they choose to. How do we talk to them about healthy relationships? And what do we do if we see their relationship and we think that it may not be healthy? Can we forbid them?
Ooh, that's a good question. You can try. Will it work? No. I mean, like, they're gonna find a way anyway. I think strict
Mhm.
parents create sneaky kids, not perfect kids. Um, we are actually in a pandemic, not the COVID-19 pandemic, but what I like to call the NMK pandemic, which is the not my kid syndrome.
Mhm.
So parents who think my kid would never do that. My kid listens to me all the time, and they would never sneak around behind my back. Your kids absolutely will do that. They will find a way. And so I think when thinking about your kids and teen dating and stuff like that, and thinking about nudes or um, like dating abuse and things like that, when you're thinking not my kid, you really need to take a step back and think, well, it could be my kid. It can be
Mhm.
anybody's kid, right?
Mhm.
So I would say with your kids when they're starting to date, I think you should talk about dating early, like pretty early on. You can talk to them about it like maybe like fourth grade. Um, if they have crushes or things like that and they tell you about it, you can talk to them about it then. You should be having those conversations pretty often and frequently and early. I would say you should have those conversations also about consent. It can super young, it can be, hey, if you don't want to hug this family member, you don't have to. That's consent 101, like for young kids, that's a great way to start. And then when they get older, when you feel like it's appropriate, saying like, okay, let's talk about strangers, or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever, romantic partner, um, an adult. Let's talk about like that, and you know what consent laws are like, and ages of consent and things like that. So um, yeah, so I would say when it comes to dating, talk about it early and often. Next, I would say establish some ground rules. Um, think about what you're comfortable with your kid doing, right? So for example, one rule could be your kid is not allowed at their partner's house if their parents aren't home. That's like an example of a ground rule. Just think about what you're comfortable with, but also make sure that when you're having these ground rules, there's open communication, because we do want kids to question authority in a healthy way. So making it so that they can ask a question. So if they're like, wait, why am I not allowed at their house? And it's like, no, you are allowed at their house, but not when their parent is not home, because
Mhm.
that's not safe, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, Another thing, you can establish a curfew. Curfews are great. I had one when I was younger. I don't regret
Mhm.
having it as an adult. I have one now that I set for myself. Um, but yeah, I if you're gonna set a curfew for your kids, I would recommend a sliding scale curfew, which is more like uh, maybe you start with an earlier curfew and then it can go later depending on good behavior, or it can go later depending on like how much older they get. So like when they're really young, maybe the curfew's like 8, 9, and then when they're older, like it can be 10 or 11 or midnight, whatever it is. I don't know what it is. But whatever you feel comfortable with, I think having a curfew is like a great rule to have. Um, and then I think one thing that parents can do that I think this is super important. Parents should be able to be their kid's excuse. Um, so if your kid is in a bad spot or in a bad situation and they don't know what to do, they can always say, "My parents said no," or "My mom's expecting me," or something like that. I used to blame my parents for stuff all the time when I was a kid. Like I was definitely getting into situations where I was like, "This is not a good spot to be in." I'd be like, "No, I can't. My mom said I can't go."
Mhm.
So, and that's, or like my mom needs me home at like this time and she's super strict. So, like, just saying like that kind of stuff, being that excuse, and then texting your mom being like, I don't want to be here anymore. And then having them come pick you up. That's a great feeling to know that like your parents going to come pick you up, no questions asked. Great. So, I would say I have a lot of kids who definitely, if they don't have that from their parents, they want it. And if they do have it from their parents, they actively use it regularly.
Good.
So,
Good. That's
mhm. um, yeah, and I guess just like follow your intuition, mama's intuition. Papa's intuition, what you all know what it is. If you feel like something's wrong, have that conversation with your kids.
Okay. Let's talk tweens. On TV and in the movies, tweens are what teens were when I was young. Now I know I'm old, but I mean they got the hair, the clothes, the makeup, and the relationships, and they're talking and is that what's really happening? I know you're at a high school, but are the young people really dating? I sound so old. The young people are they really dating that much earlier?
Oh yeah. No, oh yeah, no, kids are, I mean, so what's a tween? Tween is like what, like 13, 12, like that, like around that age, right?
It can go, yeah, depending on, it can go as low down as 9, but it's definitely starting at 11. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Kids are definitely dating at that age. Like I said
Mhm.
earlier, I mean, kids are even sending nudes at that age, which is wild to me because like a lot of those kids are still but like just children.
Yes.
So yeah, I've definitely like the nudes conversation is quite interesting, I think, because students are asking for them like left and right. I've heard students say it's wild that like 2 weeks is pretty generous, like for an amount of time for two people to be communicating before somebody asks for nudes. That's so soon. 2 weeks into getting to know somebody, in that time, they're
Wow.
probably somebody's asking for nudes at that point, or sending nudes or something like that. So yeah, it's definitely happening, especially to really young kids. And so that's something to also um, consider. And so I think along those lines, you should talk about social media with your kids. So talking to them about like stranger danger. So like Instagram, Tumblr, what are they on? TikTok, whatever. Like kids they're on all these apps, and they always have the most random people on there. So
Mhm.
people they don't even know. And I think that parents should definitely be on the lookout for that. I've definitely seen a lot. I'm on TikTok. I've definitely seen a lot of videos of people who are like, "Oh, you should send pictures for money." And I know a lot of especially my teenagers, they love money, so I do too. And I think just this concept of, oh, I can send them a picture of like my feet or whatever for money. It's not technically sexual. It's not like, um, it's safe, whatever. Like, like this is a great way of getting money on the side. Um, yeah, these are like teenagers who are having these conversations, and those are conversations that parents should definitely be having with their kids. Like, what's safe, what's not safe. There was a trend on TikTok. I don't know if it's still happening, but it was a trend like during the pandemic, especially, where there are these videos of girls who are like, "Oh, I'm on a sugar daddy website, and I have a sugar daddy who pays all my money and like, or he pays like all my bills and he buys me cars and he like a place to live and all this stuff, and I don't have to sleep with him at all." Um, those are rarely true. Those are like mostly like never ever true.
Mhm.
Um, but I would see like a lot of teenagers falling for that, and they're like, "Oh, I can just do that." And then I don't have to, I just have somebody who pays my bills and things like that. That's super scary. And so that's like another conversation to have with kids. Like there's so many different ways of like influencers and social media. Like there's so many different ways of like getting into your kid's head of like what's safe and what's not safe. So making sure to have that conversation at home pretty frequently is important.
Okay. That is frightening. And I know a lot of people think that that's not going to happen to their kids, but I know of a few kids who have not come home and gone to meet somebody in person whom they were having a relationship with online and the family didn't know. In different types of kids in different parts of the country. So have these conversations within your family. That's really important.
Yes, you should.
Now, I have on my list of questions from parents. Sometimes we want to be open, but we just don't know. Should we expect to meet who they're dating? Should we expect to meet the parents of who they're dating? Um, I assume that maybe it depends upon the age of your child. I don't know.
Yeah, I would think so. I think it's totally normal to want to meet your whoever your kid is dating. That totally makes
Mhm.
sense. And that's a firm boundary that you can put with your kid. If you're going to be dating, I want to know I want to know what they look like. that could be it. I just want to know what they look like. I just want to talk to them for like a minute, see what, what I think. And yeah, that's totally normal. I think this is your child. Like, of course you want to see who they're dating. Of course you want to know what they look like, and if you have any bad vibes, or if there's anything that you're concerned with, like just from meeting them. Yeah, you should absolutely be able to meet them.
I'll throw in there, feign a little interest in the other person.
Yeah.
Feign, not too much because it's going to be creepy, but feign a little interest because you're interested in your child. You're not necessarily interested in that other person, but you're interested in your child. So
yeah, I know a lot of people who they're like, okay, like it's a high schooler, it's puppy love, like what is it?
Yeah.
This isn't going to be like their long-term partner, like so it's not worth meeting this person. But your first relationship is where you learn a lot of your healthy habits. So also, I mean, who's to say it is puppy love? You never know. So for you, it might be puppy love, but for your teenager, it could be so real. And people do get married to their high school sweethearts. My older brother is married to his high school sweetheart. And yeah, like, it's definitely possible. But yeah, just making sure, you're interested in them, because it's also more about your kid, right? It's not really about them. It's about your kid.
Exactly.
Who are they interested in? Right.
Exactly. The same way that you would ask them about a club they belong to or something like that, really just to have conversation and get them to open up.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do? You said you asked to meet, and I know we're winding up on time here, but you asked to meet their person, and you want to get a feel for them. Now, if you get a negative vibe, what do you do then? We already discussed the fact that you can't forbid it. You can try,
Right.
but
you can try. So I don't know if it's gonna work, but no, that's super fair. I think a great way to go about it is by saying, you know what, we're not gonna love everybody you bring home. That's okay. Here are our concerns. This is just what we're concerned about. I think with your kids, you definitely want to give them some agency, let them make their own decisions and stuff like that. Also, I'm saying this as a domestic violence counselor, you can tell somebody to leave a relationship, but they're not going to unless they are ready to leave. You can't force somebody to leave a relationship if they're not ready for it. So definitely with your kids, consider that. Yeah. So just be open. You can be open about your feelings, and yeah.
Okay. So it's Valentine's Day, and you are at a high school. What's going on?
Kids are sending candygrams to each other today. I've definitely seen, it's really cute. They're all wearing like red, pink, purple to show their love for each other. I think today there's also a campaign about showing love for other students, as in like, I think there's like a Nobody Sits Alone campaign happening, I think today. If not today, then at some point this week. But yeah, just like showing the love to their romantic partners, their friends, their teachers, their like family members, anybody in their life who they have some love for.
Have we missed anything that parents definitely need to know before we sign off?
I guess I would just say some red flags for dating abuse, because I am a domestic violence counselor. So just some signs of dating abuse with teenagers. If you see any signs of isolation, so they're not seeing other friends, maybe they don't really talk to you anymore. If they're failing their classes, if they're overly secretive, or like controlling, jealous behavior, especially digital. So that could be like their partner has their passwords, or like they're not allowed to be on social media at a certain point, or they're not allowed to be friends with somebody on social media, or they constantly need to be on their phone or something like that. Just make sure you're keeping an eye out on that, because those are some pretty big red flags, I would say, for teenage dating abuse.
Okay. And what do we do if we see the red flags?
That's something you should bring up to them. Definitely be like, hey, and let them know this isn't healthy. And yeah, just make sure that they know that, and make sure that you're a safe person for them to come to. I think telling them a hard no doesn't really work, especially if kids are in abusive relationships, because think about it. Whenever your parents told you no, you were usually like, I want it even more. So yeah, just consider that.
Okay. Those are good things. Anything else we missed that we want to make sure everyone understands?
I don't think so. I think the only thing I would just hammer in is just remember, not my kid syndrome. It's the biggest pandemic that we have. But that was a joke.
No, I love it. I love it. I wrote it down. Strict parents create sneaky kids, not perfect kids. It's also in the Jessica put it in the comment section.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for this conversation. We are, and I got so many questions as parents are like, what's going on? We don't know what they're doing. We don't know if it looks the same, other than prom. Sometimes there's not the whole go pick them up, or some kids do that, some don't. I know some kids, they get boyfriend or girlfriends or some kind of romantic partner, and if it's going well, all of a sudden they start hanging out at each other's houses. So then the parents get to meet, but that's if they're comfortable, each set is comfortable with that happening. Not everybody's comfortable with it. And if they're not comfortable, you're just lost and you're saying, what's happening? So we wanted to know. Thank you for the information regarding technology. That is something that is not in our history, so we have to look out for it. And what else did you tell us that we definitely want to know about? I think just the being comfortable, being uncomfortable, that it's a silly conversation, and we should have some open-ended questions that we pose, and just ask what they think is a healthy relationship rather than telling them what we think is a healthy relationship.
Right. Don't be afraid to challenge their ideas. No, that's perfect. Don't be afraid to challenge their ideas. If they tell you something and you're like, that's not healthy, being like, what makes you think that? Like, what, things like that. So don't be afraid to challenge them, questioning them. It's totally okay.
And don't be surprised when they surprise you.
Yes, of course.
Thank you so much for joining me today. There's a lot of helpful information in here, and it's in the comment section. I want to thank everybody who watched us, and everybody who's watching us on replay. We appreciate you taking time with us. Thank you, Irene.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.